this meeting of the Hospital Board of Mineral County at 12:05. And quickly, I just want to introduce Kim Mant, who, go ahead. Oh, I missed who you are.
Yeah, I am helping out at the health center for Cindy Sturger, just kind of stepping in, filling her shoes while she's doing other things. So happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And Ray is going to be filling in for Kirsten on her campus side. So just want to welcome you both. Do we have any comments from public? Here, Virginia. This is Virginia Turner. She is a board member that was appointed in January to fill the Patterson spot until the election. We'll get on to that a little bit further into the agenda. But Virginia is a board member, so district member. Okay, has everyone had a chance to go through our board meeting minutes from last month? We need to approve those.
I'll make a motion to approve last month's minutes.
Thank you, John. Second. Thank you, Virginia. Any discussion or changes? All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Let's go to our Finance Committee meeting minutes from February 20th.
And I'll move we approve them.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Lloyd. Any changes or comments? Okay, all in favor of approving the Finance Committee meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those pass. I would like to turn the time over to our auditor, Tom, right?
Right.
We're going to go through our 2013 fiscal year audit.
Right. My name is Tom Dingus. I'm from Dingus Airport Associates, CPA firm. We're located in Spokane Valley, Washington. Our primary business is just with working with critical access hospitals and other rural healthcare, and really healthcare, but with a primary focus on rural healthcare. A lot of critical access hospitals, community health centers, and other types of healthcare organizations. Been working with you guys for several years now as your auditor, and also for the last couple of years as cost report preparer as well. Everybody should have either got it, I think they were emailed, you can printed them, but there was also some hard copies passed around. But there's really 4 different reports I was going to go through: the audited financial statements, some financial indicators, some ratios and graphs, and then a couple of letters. And as we get to each one, I'll make sure everybody's got the right one. But I'll start with the audited financial statements. I guess as I go through, please ask questions anytime along the way as well. And that will work best for
Okay, which one is that?
We're going to start with where it says Mineral County Hospital District Basic Financial Statements and Independent Auditor's Report, probably the thickest one. And first, they all say draft, and we're going to get to that reason here in a couple seconds. There's really one unresolved issue, but talking with Larry and Cliff, both of us reported everything. It's 99.9% done, but there is one issue that needs to be resolved. It would be important to get all the other results that aren't going to change to the board sooner than later, since it's already later. The report's not in here because it's a draft, but it will be an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements that follow fairly present the financial position and results of operations of the hospital. Page 3. Page 3 is the assets. We'll talk about cash and patient accounts receivable when we get to the second report. Really, the only thing of significance here is to point out estimated third-party payer settlements of $459,000. Remember, these financial statements are of June 30th, 2013 as well. As we kind of talk about this later, with some delays in getting the audit done.
What does that include?
It's $372,000 from the 2013 Medicare cost report, and then $57,000 and $30,000 from prior year Medicaid cost reports that are still outstanding, but all receivables. As critical access hospital, you're paid cost for your hospital services and for the time you operate the rural health clinic, as well. And you get paid on interim rates through as you provide the services, and then the cost report comes and trues up what you got paid on an interim rate to the actual cost. In some years you'll owe money back, and some years the hospital will get receivable. And really, a receivable is not good, a payable is not bad. It's just the difference between what you got paid and what you should have got paid based on actual cost, having to true up after the fact. And so you'll always, as a critical access hospital, have sometimes a fairly significant number as a receivable or payable there. Especially as if operations are changing, rapidly up or rapidly down is when a number can really be big either way. Otherwise, they're really fairly similar items on the balance sheet from the previous years and nothing of any particular noteworthy significance. Page 4 are your liabilities and net assets. This is where your liabilities at the top, obviously. The main thing here, the two items to point out is first, a few lines down is accounts payable capital, $331,512. That was what was due on some electronic health record software at that point in time that you purchased but hadn't paid for. Separated that out from the regular accounts payable so you know that your regular accounts payable was in what range that was really in. And then long-term debt, we'll get to that when we get to note 6 of the financial statement notes and page 15, just as there is some significance there, but easier to show later. Page 5, what I spend most of the time on the financial statements, is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in that position, your income statement. And you start off with the top net patient service revenue, and really, it's a 10% decrease from the previous year, which at the end of the day, that decrease is attributable to the fact that you only operated the clinic for the first few months of the year, and the clinic was operated by Mineral Regional Health Center for the last part of the month, so that decrease is pretty much directly related to that. Acute care days went down from 269 to 231. Swing bed days went up from 4,695 in the previous year to 5,090. ER visits were 1251 in one year and 1249 in the other year, remarkably similar. Clinic visits, what you're talking about, went from about 8,100 visits in fiscal year 2012 down to 2,100 in fiscal year 13. And then the assisted living visits, assisted living facility days were very close to the same as well, about 38. So that's not in the report, but just kind of so you can help. Sorry about that. Okay. Just kind of explaining that net patient.
I know, I was looking too, Gary.
Yeah. But just the numbers of why that went down 10%, knowing how that one came about helps understand how the rest of the financial statements are going to flow. And so 10% decrease, mostly driven by the clinic operations. And then the operating expenses, the same thing overall, about a 10% decrease from the previous year. And so that's where so the expenses went down about the same rate that the revenue went down, which is what you do want those to go hand in hand. And you get to an operating loss of $196,000 in fiscal year 2013 compared to $678,000 in the previous year. Like I said, net patient service revenue and operating expenses both went down 10%. The difference is there was more electronic health records incentive payment that you got of $128,000 in fiscal year 13, and then some grant revenue that helped kind of close that gap on the operating loss from the previous year. Then you get into your non-operating revenues, your taxation, contributions and grants, and then we get down to the line item, the one that's still really, I guess, in just an open item debate of what the number should be, is the transfer to Mineral Regional Health Center of $738,000, the support that was provided to the startup of the Mineral Regional Health Center, and kind of wrapping this up, and concerned that maybe some of that should be recorded is actually still due from the Mineral Regional Health Center back.
I was going to ask about that because there was a statement in one of the other documents that says that it was just in the letter to the board that provided. There is some discrepancy on that. I wasn't sure that was.
Yeah, and that's what and it really all boils down to whatever you guys decide at Mineral Regional Health Center. There's nothing as auditors, the number is your guys' decision to make. The information we were given was that it was everything that the net back and forth was going to be the support that the hospital provided to Mineral Regional Health Center. And then there's some more activity still going on in fiscal year 14 until January 1st, when you're really, I guess, truly separated up all in a more formal and distinct way. And so there's some true up of that has to occur in fiscal year 14 as well. And so it's really, I guess, up to you guys as boards, and I know some of you sit on both boards, and some of you have heard the word also did the audit for Mineral Regional Health Center, and this at the timing of these, trying to keep these in sync, but that was our understanding that that was completely forgiven on both sides and it would work its way out in 2014. So that has to be, that is the issue that has to be resolved. What that agreement says, does it take, I think it could play out different ways, is like, it could be that the health center owes it, but it's not, can't pay it anytime soon, so then it's not collectible and it would still show up as a transfer because it would just be as transfer when they could pay it, if you decide to pay it in the future. It could be that this works out, that it's a fiscal year 14 transaction of where the health center pays that about $300,000 amount in that agreement. Or it could go back there and try to record that as a receivable on your guy at June 30th, 2013. And so that's something that has to just be worked out between the two respective boards and the two respective management teams of what that agreement is. Because there's a lot of, transactions that went back and forth, and payroll support and collections for one organization that were really on to the other organization. And to get that all settled out is really your guys' call. So that's the remaining issue. And Cindy's she's got to be part of the conversation, I think, to get this resolved. She's not available at the moment. The next line is also unique. Impairment of capital assets, a loss of about $257,000. These were all the costs that were incurred as you were kind of going down the path for the hospital remodel or new hospital building, and now that project's essentially been abandoned, those costs have to be written off and not capitalized as part of the new building. That's not going to occur. So that's a $257,000 loss that was incurred this year as well. Then you get some positive note. You got some capital contributions and grant for mammography, a bus, and beds, about $506,000. So you get down to a change in that position or your net income, which this could change because of that one number, that $738,000 support number to an regional health center could change. But at this point, it's about a $200,000 loss for fiscal year 2013, compared to about $258,000 loss the previous year. Any questions?
Well, I think that, we've had a lot of discussion with the folks at the clinic about, it was kind of news to us, I guess. We didn't understand it that way, I guess. Certainly that we were going to write off that $300,000 amount that Tom is talking about, but we will get together with Cindy. Cindy's in New Zealand, visiting a son, and is out of the country, so it's been impossible to get a hold of her and make sure that we're all on the same page with that previous communication. So as soon as we do that, we'll resolve this issue and finalize the audit report.
Yeah, and I think quite honestly, the only way that issue can be resolved, if there's going to be forgiveness, and don't misunderstand me the way I say it, I'm not saying I'm against doing that, but I think that requires board action, and it has to be an agenda item for the board to act on it, so.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, we had, Cliff and I sat in on those meetings, that Bill got in kind of at the end of that process, but, John Earl, the previous CFO that was helping, the clinic, we had a series of meetings with him to identify this $308,000 net amount. I mean, the nets between the two organizations, and it's, I don't know, it's certainly stuck in my old ball brain, I guess, that why are we identifying that if it was to just write it off? I guess that wasn't our understanding. It certainly was not Cliff and my understanding that was the case. I mean, and then the number was included in the memorandum of understanding that we did, but I guess Cliff and I assumed, and maybe we shouldn't have, that that was an amount that was owed back. I think we can settle this out. There's a number of things that are going on back and forth right now with the clinic, with some other transactions, and maybe we can work it into
memorandum agreement is about a fiscal year 14
Yeah,
agreement.
yeah, it didn't
And so
even
that
apply.
clouds the issue of whether
Right.
that,
Right.
is it just transfers to this point,
Right.
and,
Well, it was an ugly year with all the transaction,
yeah, because that number comes up to be 300.
with the whole operational situation with with the clinic and the non-separation of the two organizations up until January 1, really, and
Yeah,
even after that, there some back and forth
Yeah.
until just the last month or so, but.
yeah, so, really the net between the two organizations in fiscal year 2013 was $738,000. And the
Yeah,
question
at that
is,
point.
how much of that net gets paid back and how much is just support to help them start up their operations?
So until that's resolved, does that hold up this audit?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what the decision that was made, was the way, that, but presenting, because everything else is
The same.
the same. It comes down to that line, and whether that's what the amount will be, whether it's a 2013 transaction, whether it's a 2014, recognition that this will all take care of itself in 2014, if there's a cash transfer from the clinic to the hospital will occur there, and as part of the net transfers that have occurred in 2014 as well. And I don't know which way those numbers played out either way, because there's money going back and forth both directions.
What's the consequences of the audit being held up?
Not really.
Is there,
You guys as governance are the main reason you would want it quicker. The only other consequences would be if you had some sort of creditor, donor insurance.
that is a
something
requirement to have?
That they would want it and might impact what they do for you. But I don't think you've had any instance of that happening.
No, I mean, the creditors all wanna, of course, see the final audit.
Right. Yeah. And I was gonna mention this later, but we do wanna get this back, or the audit field for us doing the audit occurs like August or September, and we're here in October and November presenting 4 or 5 months after the year, and that has to be the goal. There was a lot going on last year, and the resources the work was to get that done. It wasn't possible, but that's the goal that you should have as a board and as an organization.
well, I think you were joking with Cliff that you're just gonna start the next audit.
Yeah,
As soon as this
I
one's
said,
done,
let's
you're
get
gonna show
going.
up on the
Let's
doorstep.
start. Yeah.
Might as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just over here already, but no, but we do, it does need to get to that point, and you got to have the resources devoted to it internally. I think everybody was pulled 100 different directions in the last year, and a lot of uncertainty, and obviously, you're all aware of that more than I am. But we do need, the goal would be that you're gonna see your auditor very shortly again, relatively speaking, before it snows again.
Yes, exactly.
I'll beat the snow instead of missing it all completely. Yeah. So,
Okay.
the next couple of pages are the statement of cash flows, which is show actual cash in and out. Not going to go through that in any great detail. It's similar to the statement of revenue and expenses. Then the notes start on page 8, which is your the notes serve 3 purposes. Say who you are as an organization. Describe how different transactions and balances are reported in the financial statements. And then also give details on additional balances and transactions that a reader of the financial statements would want to know. And financial statements, audited financial statements or external financial statements, are directed at people external to the organization. Is for creditors, donors. I mean, certainly it serves a purpose for governance and management as well, but it's really they're directed to somebody outside the organization of what they would want to know about your organization. So not, when we already talked about that reporting entity does talk about the Tamarack Health Clinic operations were transferred to the organization. Otherwise, you could flip through a few pages, which is all good reading to help understand the financial statements, but I'm not going to go through it in detail, and not any real significant changes from the previous years. And really, as you go through these notes, not a lot of things that are particularly net patient service revenue that you collect by major payer types. So you got Medicare, Medicaid, your other third-party payers, which is commercial insurance, patients, and then does list Montana bed tax receipts separately, and then also track out charity care and the provision for bad debt. But Medicare represents 46% of your revenue, and Medicaid is about 18%. And your Medicaid is as high as it is because of the assisted living facility and swing beds. If it was just pure hospital operations, it'd probably be couple percent. Not
Less than 8 probably.
less than, yeah, not a very big number. So that Medicaid is higher than you might, because you pay, a lot of your swing bed patients and a lot of your assisted living residents are paid by Medicaid. So, reliance on Medicare and Medicaid programs. You can, in a sense, you're about half cost-based reimbursed on a very aggregate basis. And as a critical access hospital, you get cost-based reimbursement from Medicare, and Medicaid has a component of cost-based reimbursement in it as well. Which means that no matter what, you're gonna break even on that part of your business. And obviously, sometimes the risk management tool in a way is that no matter how good your volume is and how efficient you are, you still break even. No matter how low your volume is or how inefficient you are, you still break even on that part of business. And it's that other 50% of your business is where your profit or loss is determined by your volumes, your efficiency, and providing service. So it cuts the upside, but it also reduces the risk on the downside, which is the nature of the program. More information just on patient service revenue. Page 20 is the electronic health records incentive. You've received some Medicaid. You received the first Medicaid incentive payment in 2013. When you meet meaningful use for Medicare, then you'll get a fair amount of that cost for that electronic health records. Software and hardware will be reimbursed by Medicare in the year you meet meaningful use, or the year you first make your 90 days meaningful use in the first year before September 30th of a federal fiscal year. And then subsequent payments can be if you spend more money in subsequent years. The rest of the notes relatively the same as the previous year, nothing particularly significant. The next, if there's no questions on that, the next report is the one that says financial indicators, and you take there'll be some color involved in this one. I like to present this as it gives an opportunity to see the hospital's financial position and activity in a more visual fashion with some comparison of prior years, and then some of the ratios and graphs it'll have also benchmarks, or not necessarily benchmarks, but comparisons to other facilities of like size and location. Remembering that those benchmarks for those are medians, they're not good or bad, that's just the midpoint of that group of hospitals. And so the first one is the total margin, with a loss of a negative margin of 2.7%, it's 3.6% in the previous year. Really, as your goal as an organization, as you go forward, is that to be sustainable, that needs to be in the 3 to 6% range from year to year, and to move to that place. The next one is operating margin, and obviously the total margin is negative. The operating margin is almost certainly going to be negative, but 3.1% and 10.1% negative operating margin in the previous year. And while it is a challenge as a critical access hospital, and as a critical access hospital of your size, not a really large hospital, it is necessary to get to that break-even point from operations to sustain yourself. I mean, it's a hard job, but it's the job Larry signed up for.
Keeps him up at night.
Yeah. But it does need to be the goal, and whether you do that through additional services and obviously cost control, and be the most efficient as you can in what you do, but it has to be that combination of services. Days cash on hand, not really a lot of days cash on hand. As a goal, you say 90 days for operating reserve, and then once you pick your operating reserve, another 90 days of capital reserves. And he's like, you're not really sitting happy until you're at 180 days.
This is the one that keeps me up at night.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Actually, I've got it on some stuff that I'm gonna talk about later with the board, but, the current, cash on hand is 8.77 days.
Yeah.
We gotta turn that around.
Right.
Tough job, but we gotta do that.
I look at of all these ratios, the two that I think are most important are the operating margin, because that tells you whether you're actually how well you're operating, and the days cash on hand is the one from the asset side, because this tells you what your reserves are. This gives you your margin of error, so to speak, or the reserves you have for opportunities as they exist. And as they're saying, you're just making it day to day at this point. Current ratio compares your current assets to your current liabilities. To be strong, this should be more in the at least 2 to 1 range. You're 1.5 to 1. You see lots of hospitals in the 3 or 4 range actually. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the cash position that you have, and then also the significant, a fair amount of debt that the organization has at this point as well, relative to its size. The next one, capital equipment to annual depreciation. This is a graph, a ratio that tries to show how fast are you replacing your equipment at the same rate you're using it up. So it compares equipment acquisitions in a particular year compared to depreciation expense, the theoretical amount of time. Buy a piece of equipment, it has a 3-year life, a 5-year life, a 7-year life, and so it gets expensed over that amount of time and compares the two. And then if over time this is below 100%, that means you're not replacing your capital as fast as you're using it. If it's over 100%, you are. Keeping in mind that any 1 year could be way high or way low just because of a particular purchase. And 2014 will almost certainly be way over 100% because you're going to bring all your electronic health records software on.
Well, and all the mammography.
Yeah, and so we already know 14 is going to change to a very positive number, but so you got to look at kind of the rolling 5 years of this whole thing.
The 284% on 2010, that was the year we brought in the CT scanner, is that right?
I think so.
Is that why that one was so high?
Chris.
Was that the year?
Yeah,
I think it was, yeah.
And that was a very significant piece of equipment relative to the depreciation expense on what was going on before. The next one is long-term debt to net position. This shows your debt, essentially your debt to equity ratio, and it's your debt relative to your equity is increasing as you've borrowed some more money and you have the losses, so your equity is decreasing and your debt is increasing, so that's trending in a way you don't really want it to be trending. Days in debt patient accounts receivable, the average time it takes to collect an accounts receivable. This has jumped up through some of the turmoils too. You want to get that down ideally into the 40s. Once electronic health records is implemented and you're going and everything's working, Deb's shaking her head. But that's where you need to go. And what we see, it's interesting, and you can talk with your colleagues, is that when everything is working right, 40 can be done. But there are so many different computer conversions and EHR conversions that it's like hospitals are in the 80s and 90s, and then the other one, you're either in the 80s or 90s or in the 40s. I mean, it's like there's not a lot of middle ground anymore. It's either like really bad or it's working fine. Because there's just, everybody's doing these implementations right now. And so just knowing that needs to come back down as you get implemented, which will help the cash flow.
I was gonna say, that's,
Yeah.
there's days of cash in that
Yeah.
column.
Yeah, you're right. You get it down to 40, you just sped up a month's worth of collections.
Right, yeah.
A bump, then you get back in the right area. Gross days in accounts receivable just shows it without allowances and contractual adjustments and that similar trend. Contractual adjustment percentage, which is interesting because this just shows how much of your actual standard charge you're not getting paid by your payers, and it's not you're getting paid about right at charges, which is a critical access hospital and a smaller critical access hospital is not that unusual. I'm going to a board meeting tonight where they actually get paid 30% more than their charges. They're so small and they do so many Medicare swing beds. It's like just a crazy ratio. But it's not, and so this is not really a good thing or a bad thing. It's just to see how this relates to your charges. I mean, going down could mean your charge structure hasn't been increasing. You could certainly raise charges 10% and the number would obviously jump right back up. Your other payers in your community besides Medicare and Medicaid, are they paying better or worse? Your major employers, is that insurance paying better or worse compared to your standard charges? Something to keep an eye on. Bad debt has been around 7%, 7 to 8% of your net patient service revenue for the last few years. got some comparisons of Montana hospitals and Far West hospitals with 5% and 6.3%. So a little higher than the median. That's just the median. That's just half hospitals are higher than that, half are lower. We really see this number all over the board. It's a very community to community type of thing. I mean, I go to places where it's not even 1%, just because it's a very small community, no migratory labor, everybody's insured or self-insured, to places where it's 20%, where that's just the community. So you're kind of right in the middle of all that. I mean, it's a little higher than some, but definitely a lot lower than others as well. But just knowing that, and then you add that together with the next graph, which shows that your charity care is about 2.5%. So you're closing in about 10% of your patient revenue is not collected, it is right away gone, either through bad debt or charity care. And the difference is bad debt is theoretically the patient that can pay and chooses not to pay, and charity care is a patient that is unable to pay, and so you recognize that. And almost in any case, there's always some charity care that's misclassified as bad debt, because not everybody that qualifies for charity care is going to go through the steps to qualify. So always know that bad debt's a little overstated and charity care is always a little understated. But looking at it in total, you're about 10% of your patient population doesn't pay. Full-time equivalents, just so you, as a measure of how your workforce changes through the years. It was relatively stable, obviously, with the clinic operations being moved to Mineral Regional Health Center. FTE count dropped. The next one is net patient service revenue. This is like an overall, a very broad productivity measure of how much net patient service revenue is generated per each full-time equivalent person that works in the organization. Relatively steady and actually bumped up a little bit there, a little more revenue per person. And then the last one, what is each average full-time equivalent cost the organization? Because salaries and wages and benefits are the biggest expense of a hospital organization. About $45,000 is the average salary, and plus another $10,000, $11,000 of benefits per person. Benefits and employee payroll taxes. Just know what your cost of labor is. And that, if you try to compare that to other hospitals, be careful doing that, because if it's a hospital system that employs a lot of physicians or has a lot of, has a huge, I mean, that number is going to be obviously a lot higher if they have a lot of employed physicians. And an organization more like you that has a lot of long-term care and a lot of assisted living will have a lower number, because you'll be more disproportionately dietary, housekeeping, nurse aides than maybe a hospital that doesn't have any long-term care. So it's just okay. It's a hard one to compare facility to facility, but it's a good one to just monitor yourself. Any questions?
I like colored graphs.
Yeah. That's what it does. It makes, even, I used to say that non-financial people like the graphs better, but really financial people like the graphs better too, because it helps us interpret the numbers. Yeah. What is it all that those financial statements really telling us? There's two letters. I'll go through those real briefly. The first one I'll cover, they're both say Board of Directors, Mineral County Health District at the top. But if you go down to the first bold heading, it says Board Oversight in the first page, and it's a 2-page letter. This is the management letter. This is where we report as the auditors material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, or any other comments that we have as a result of the audit. Material weaknesses are the highest level of a finding report. Significant deficiencies are the next level down, and then oftentimes in an audit we'll also just report other suggestions or recommendations that don't have to be reported. The first one is board oversight. Is just there wasn't financial statement information that was provided. Remember, this is fiscal year 2013 we're talking about, where a ways back, and is that with all the transition and the uncertainty, and there was, and obviously with the numbers that we're still even today kind of 100% sure of, we're getting information the board needed to do on a regular basis to know where everything was going. Adjusting journal entries, we did make some material adjustments as part of the audit, mostly related just to between the relationship and the transactions between Mineral Regional Health Center and the hospital. then a significant deficiency, the next,
Before you go into that, do you see that these are things that we are working to have them corrected? Well, I mean, the
I think the board oversight
board oversight, it would definitely is
is handled.
handled, but what about the adjusted journal entries?
Well, we won't really know that until we do the audit, because when we come for the audit, and how we measure that, if it's
Until
Until
2014,
14 is
to see
over,
if that has been
yeah,
corrected.
we do cause through the year, we're not doing the audit, so we wouldn't necessarily know.
Sure.
But we do the audit, if it's a material or significant adjustment that we make that's detected as a result of the auditor, that's saying that your internal controls didn't catch it, and so then it becomes a deficiency in internal controls. And it's a goal to do that. Yeah,
Well, some of this was a conscious decision to wait till after the audit to do some of those
yeah,
entries too. So.
yeah, and so this is obviously a year that needs to be going.
Yeah,
Thank you.
when I read that letter,
Simply, yes.
it kept flashing through my mind that Port Cliff, during most of that fiscal year that you were auditing, I mean, he was doing the financials, I think at one point for the innovations grant, right? Plus the the clinic, plus the hospital, and
The biggest problem is unable to get information out of the system half the time.
yeah, it just was an ugly year. I mean, and that's why you see some of those comments, I think, from the auditors, which I'm not used to seeing on a management letter, but just the way it is. And I think we've turned the corner certainly since last fall, I think, with a lot of these issues, and both organizations are now operating as they're supposed to, very separately, and although we still cooperate back and forth certainly, but we have more resources, available, with Bill and the clinic folks financially over there and all that stuff. So, it's just one of those things with the way the audit letter's set up there.
I'm pretty sure it was not really a surprise that there was. And so then some other ones, similar things with some adjustments that were necessary as part of the audit, capital assets, investment, and then just, the one manual journal entry one is this one's always a tough one in a smaller organization, but something we do, is that there does need to be some checks and balances in the systems when you only have one person in the accounting department and they're making journal entries without anybody else reviewing or approving. That does add risk to the financial reporting, and so to get some checks and balances for
Does that appear on most of your management letters for real small facilities? I mean,
it appears on a fair amount, but trying to work in if there is a second accountant. Sometimes it's just that there are two accounting people, and one of them just needs to be in the more review and supervisory function, and the other one needs to be doing them. And then sometimes working in CEOs is part of the review.
Why I haven't done any journal entries for a long time.
And it depends on the organization. If it's a CEO that used to be a CFO, there's some natural. But if it's a CEO that was never a CFO, that might not be. He might say you're doing it, but it might not be that productive either.
Right.
And so, but just it's a challenge and something to be aware of. And then just a few reconciliation. And then the last letter actually touches on a few of the same things we've already touched on. This is the letter of things that, as a board and a finance committee, audit committee, you want to know from your auditors. It talks about that there were some accounting changes because of some changes in governmental accounting standards, but nothing significant that we need to spend much time on. Points out that there are estimates in financial statements. The allowance for uncollectible accounts and contractual adjustments is an estimate. Your settlements, Medicare and Medicaid are estimates, and they're not gonna come out exactly as estimated at the time. You make estimates based on the best information you have available, and more information is always becoming available. But I think yours aren't particularly volatile in any sense. We talked about the difficulties in counter-reporting the audit. This is much later than you should have an audit report. We talked about trying to move that up and getting that done in August and September, and being here to report in October and November instead of. And then we talked about the adjustments, and then management does provide us representations. They provided us all information and answered all our questions.
based upon your overview of it all and perhaps comparing others of our size, are there a couple of real important bullets you think that stand out that we should be concentrating on to improve our financial status?
Well, I guess, so getting to a place where you can operate, where your operating margin is positive, is you know, whether that can be through some other services you can provide, or whether that's just through cost control. That's gotta be the focus. I think resource-wise and getting and I think you're at that point now, but we're getting regular financial information to the finance committee, to the board, and just even management having it available to make decisions is important, just to know where you're at, while you still have time to react to it constructively. Over time, you gotta get some of that debt paid down and some capital reserves built up. And I think overall for the community, with the clinic people here too, is you guys trying to work together, continue to work together in a productive way, is gonna be critical for both organizations. I mean, you guys are undertaking not what many other communities have been real effective in doing, is getting the two types of organizations to work together, because there's some natural disincentives in the system that work against community health centers and critical access hospitals always being on exactly the same page. And dysfunction in the healthcare system, imagine that. But the relationship between the two organizations is going to be critical for the hospital, probably in a lot of respects more than the community health center. And that just is
You know, the board members, all of them may not know it, but your firm did, you know, the clinic audit as well. I'm sure you can't talk about their audit in our meeting, but just to let everybody know, I mean, you're familiar with both organizations, certainly.
And we audit community health centers and other communities, and it's fascinating to be an auditor that works with both critical access hospitals and community health centers, because
pretty unusual.
trust me, this would be the only place we've worked with both organizations in the same community. Because the relationships are strained in most communities. And because the incentives are not aligned.
Well, I think that depends on what you look at as your ultimate goal. If you look at your ultimate goal as being providing health care to the community, the incentives are aligned. And I think that's the bottom line, and the thing we've always got to remember. You know, if the hospital was to try and run the clinic without the health center at all, if we were to try and do it all, we'd have to do it on $700,000 less a year, because we wouldn't have that grant money. And if the hospital was to go away, the clinic isn't going to have an emergency room. The people in the community aren't going to have an emergency room, which is absolutely critical to providing health care as well. So I think if your focus is not what's best for the clinic or what's best for the hospital, but rather what's best for the people in the county, then the interests are aligned. And I think that's where we got to keep it.
And that's going to, I mean, we travel to many communities, and that's going to take a lot of work between the two boards and the two sets of management to keep that, because I think what you see is people will agree today, but 18 months from now, a third of you will be different people between.
It's been a lot messier than we had hoped.
But you're actually in some respects a better track than most, because I literally about a year ago went to a community in Colorado and I did a presentation to the boards of both the critical access hospital and community health center. And it's like everybody in the room said, "Great, that all makes sense and we can work together." They didn't. I mean, they had the meeting and then they all went. They thought about it a little bit, and they, you know, some board members on each board resigned, and at the end of the day, it was all still the same. There was board members that said exactly what you said, we need to work together, but then they didn't, and people got frustrated.
Can you identify where the primary rubs are? You know, with the hot spots that really people really contend with.
Hospitals that provide primary care and compete with them as primary care, and them. When I was over across the street, you guys were them, though. But is radiology, imaging, and lab. whether the community health center does that themselves or refers it to the hospital is the rub.
Okay.
Because you need that for profitability. They don't have to provide it.
Can I get us back on topic?
Yeah, okay.
We've wandered quite a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Before we finish up, are there any other questions for Tom? I had one quick question that is slightly unrelated to this. You guys also do our 990 forms, you prepare our 990 forms?
Yeah.
Has that been done and submitted?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we had a chance to look at that prior to being submitted. I've been going over that over the last year or so, and I know that one of the questions is the board needs to look at it prior to submission, so I just wanna make sure that happens.
Cliff, do you know where you and Ricky are on that?
I think we're down to just finishing up the community benefits part of it.
Okay, so,
So-
yeah, it should be
Okay.
important.
Very good.
Ricky Passion probably works on that.
Okay. Alright, thank you, Tom.
All right, thank you.
Let's move on to our finance committee report, Lloyd.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. January, we had a loss of $16,383, and in February, we had a loss of $13,920.
It's the right direction at least.
Yes, but we had some good things that happened that made it
Yeah.
less of a loss. Okay, the gross hospital revenue decreased from $524,000 to $415,000, which is unfavorable variance.
Wrong direction.
Yeah.
The operating expenses went from 505 to 467, which is favorable because it did go down. But we ended up with charity care of 11,000, bed tax of 52 came in, which is a one-time a year that we get paid that, and the health center paid 28,000 for the insurance and things that they need. So that all helped bringing the losses down to the 13,000. And they're just a one-time hit, so we can't look for that to happen again. In the utilization, we had 19 versus 22. The outpatients was 413 versus 504. The surgeries was 4 versus 13. Assisted living is 100%.
I'm sorry, with the surgeries, were there more scheduled for this, were there more in March than February?
March is doing good, we're doing about 5 a week.
Okay.
2 weeks.
Just for 2
For
weeks.
2 weeks so far. We've only had 2 weeks of 5.
Oh, okay.
But there's 5 more scheduled next week.
Yeah.
Non-skilled is 366 versus 428. The skilled was 16 versus 43, and those are the ones that were saving us.
That were really high last couple of months.
The operating expense payroll was low because it was a short month. Purchasing services is down because of the surgeries that didn't get scheduled. Same with the supplies. Utilities went up because they had a leak in the propane from the tank to the hospital. And the insurance expenses went down because of the health care reimbursed their share. That's kind of what I got out of it.
Okay. Is there anything else that finance committee?
Well, finance
Needs to-
committee did recommend that we accept the financial.
Okay.
And I'll make a motion, we accept the report.
Thank you, John. Okay, thank you, Jen. Do you have any further questions or discussions about the financial report? All in favor of accepting February's financial statements?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, let's move on, thank you. medical staff report. Are you gonna do that, Dr. Pappard?
Well, I'd be happy to, that's why I'm here today. I basically, if you don't mind, I'd like to start with just a basic question.
Sure.
What does the board need from me? I'm not exactly an official chief medical officer, although I seem to be the AirStat's chief medical officer. I don't know what your understanding is on that. Could you clarify that for me to start with? What is my role?
As chief of staff, my understanding that you're
I'm
the
not chief of staff yet either,
Okay.
because that has not been formally done.
Okay.
So, sorry, go ahead.
That was my question.
The question is, what do you want in the report, I think?
What
Do you
what
want me to be
report,
your-
what do you want?
Do you want me to be your medical officer? And I'm happy to do so, because I think there's a lot of things that we need a medical officer for. There's a lot of things we've just not done in the past because we didn't have anyone who was really willing to come to board meetings and take the time and effort to do all the things for and with the providers and the organization to make those things happen.
I didn't realize that
But the
board needed to
board
do that. I
doesn't
thought that's the med
appoint.
staff
I mean,
that
the med
appoints
staff
that.
appoints their own.
Well, chief of staff, yes. In your mind, is the medical officer the same individual?
That's what I thought.
I'm asking.
That
Because
was
to me,
what
they're
I
two different
thought.
people. You can have a chief of staff who's not your chief medical officer. So,
You know, large organizations frequently have
many,
chief medical officer.
yeah.
I've never worked in a facility that's big enough to do that.
That's an interesting, I've not,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
I haven't.
Clarify on land. Well, let's just, for the moment, let's just pretend that all the providers get together and all hail the chief. I become chief of staff. What do you need in the board meetings from me to help you do what you need?
Any input from the board? And you're not the first one that's asked this question. We've had other medical providers ask this as well. And, I think we wanna make sure that we are communicating more than anything, that we're on the same page, that we know, that you all know what direction the board is going. So it's extremely helpful that Laurel's been here, that you've been here, that you're getting information, as well as things that you need the board to be aware of. I think is really what we're looking at. That's what I thought.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I could chime in here. You know, I've been
Yeah.
here on hospitals, small ones, for a long time, 30+ years, and I was just absolutely shocked, you know, when I came here and attended my first board meeting, like, I think a day after I'd been here, you know, that first board meeting, and, you know, there was no one from the medical staff. And not only that, but, you know, the board was telling me that no one in the history, I mean, Cliff's been around for, 15 years, I think, and, some of the board members have been around quite a while, and never in the history of Mineral Community Hospital had the chief of staff come and, talk to the board. I'm all with Amy here. I mean, it's just really important that we're all on the same page and communicate as much as we can, and move down the path together, and medical staff input to that is, chief of staff input to that is just absolutely critical, I think.
Can I just give an example of somewhere?
Yeah, sure.
When we were looking at, for instance, like EHR, would have been extremely helpful to have medical staff input. I don't remember having much medical staff input there. I mean, some of those bigger decisions that we're making, it's critical for us to I mean, you're the ones affected by it. You're the ones, we need your input on those things as they come up, certainly.
Look, guys, I'm happy to do whatever it takes
I know.
to make it real. Okay, I'll do that. I actually expect to work for my salary. I expect to do whatever's required. I will tell you that the only rub is, sadly, when I have my one day where I'm working as a hospitalist over the hospital, it's kind of hard to do those things. So there's a time conflict there. If a board meeting's on Thursday, well,
darn, that's the day I happen to be working in the hospital too, and if I'm called out, well, that interrupts any communication on my part with you guys and vice versa. Don't have a solution for this, other than maybe total rigging the schedule so that I'm not on a Thursday on it. But then again, it has to be that way, because otherwise I'm an employee in the clinic.
Right.
Right.
And Julie was gonna talk to you about, possibility of having, you know, maybe myself or someone from the board come when appropriate to the medical staff meeting. Don't know how you, I mean, that's really your call on something like that, but if that would help facilitate any,
You know, I
maybe
think
some
that
of the
is ideal, because the other part of this question is, how do you want to communicate? Because, I'll be honest, I mean, we're running around in circles from A to B,
you know,
you know, and if Larry had to stop me in the hallway, good luck. You know,
It's been tough to.
especially with, you know, now that we've implemented a new EHR, and that's yet another taxing matter for time. So, I mean, okay, all right, well, on the other side of this, on the clinical side in the hospital, you know, of course, Kirsten and others just sit down and say, hey, we need you guys to be involved in specific committees and quality issues, so we are doing those things. Okay, so we've already begun those, except now we have actually a little more presence to do those on a regular scheduled basis. That means a better framework for quality, so we'll keep working to get that done. And that involves things for the people who don't understand it. That involves like specific disease processes, but it also involves things like, you know, well, what do we put in our pharmacy? It costs dollars to put a medicine on the wall. Are we using and all that? Well, that's all being dealt with by committees you have present, but they've not had the benefit of any provider who's willing to sit down in a meeting and say, well,
that doesn't make any sense.
having any input, okay? Now, they come to the staff meetings to try to get our attention to say, well, what about pharmaceuticals, and well, what about this, and what do you think about these drugs? And that's nice. Now we're gonna move maybe away from some of that, where they actually get the provider on their time in the facility to sit in their meetings and say, rather than taking up time in a staff meeting. In other words, we're more present, so we're working on that. One issue I would like for you all to think about and reflect on, and Larry, I apologize, you and I have not had a chance to formally sit down.
It's been crazy lately.
Look, we need to think a little bit about what happens when we don't have provider coverage. We nearly had an episode this week where we found out a provider might not have known he was on. It's just a mistake. Things happen, or if someone dies, or if someone's car gets banged up on the highway, and it would be nice to have a little reserve there, some way of saying, oh, well, we'll try to call Dr. So-and-so or PA so-and-so, you know. So I know we've got Kirsten and them working on that. The schedules are there. I know my schedule out for a long time to come. That's not the issue. The issue is we need some sort of person in the wings.
Backup.
In the waiting, we need a backup. Because,
Stuff happens.
can't always be here. I mean,
Well, right.
Stuff happens.
you know, and if we had to, yeah, the other night I could have done it. I would have done it without batting an eye, but, you know, what if I weren't here? What if it's a Saturday night? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Off the top of my head.
I wish Kim were still here. It's an issue that we've been talking about internally quite a bit, especially when we notice on the MRHC report, you know, that we just got just a few days ago. There were 9 days. If we understood that report right, there were 9 days in February where one provider in the clinic. Well, you know, I know one of those days you didn't feel very well, and you know you weren't
silly me
available. That doesn't happen.
I had the shot.
Yeah, but you know.
The flip side to this for the hospital, and I've got both feet. I get one in each department, right?
Right.
The flip side of this is, yes, that on the clinic side, we're feeling the same rub. Right now, we're talking about providers can't even get time off.
Right.
We're talking 6 months out, folks.
And
when someone has to go to a funeral or someone wants a few days off, it is a hardship for us. So it may be the solution is in that perhaps the two organizations will work together to secure a common individual or parties to form some sort of backup.
yeah, I'll just be blunt here, I guess. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I will be able to be
You're
blunt
good at
anyway.
being blunt.
I'm good at being blunt. You know, we have, we're very concerned about this on the hospital side, and, you know, I think, well, I don't know if the medical staff is aware of it, but we've been talking to KT about maybe getting her over here. I mean, this is gonna take a while, lots of details to work out, but we are looking at the possibility of bringing KT full-time on the hospital side, you know, 3 or 4 days a week or whatever, you know, whatever we work out with her, so that we can plug her more into the, into the call schedule. And as part of that discussion, we certainly hear from the community, you know, I heard it just a bunch in the last 30 to 40 days, that people would like access to KT on the clinic side, you know, on the clinic side. So we've had some discussion about, you know, maybe we can bring her in, and, you know, when you do have walk-ins, and, you know, you're just slammed on the clinic side and can't handle the load, although the perception of the clinic folks is different than ours, that, you know, that they have the capacity, I guess, you know, to handle the walk-ins and stuff. But if we could work out some deal where, you know, we know because of the rules and regs, which make these silos, that, you know, you can't loan, you know, a provider from the clinic over to the hospital. You know, that's not gonna work for a lot of reasons. But, you know, we could loan or provide a provider perhaps, you know, to the clinic, you know, to handle the additional workload, or the call-in, you know, somebody's sick and can't come in. If we have some capacity where we can float back and forth, you know, on our side anyway, that might help the situation,
It seems to me, from what I do understand about HRSA, they're more concerned about how HRSA people are used elsewhere rather than how other people are used in an HRSA facility.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think
So
the issue
actually, if it were to swing back towards MRHC, that might be a workable solution.
Yeah.
That can.
Whereas
Cliff is actually
going the other direction is apparently far less flexible. I'm not a
Well, it
CEO,
is,
I
you
don't
know,
No, I think you're right.
for a bunch of reasons. You know, liability, they have Federal Tort Claims Act, you know, protections, you know,
Which we don't at the moment, but that's a future goal.
right,
Right.
by June 1st, you know, they're working on that,
Okay.
which will save some costs for the clinic.
Right.
Those are the things I would just
I
mention to
guess,
the board.
Dr. Pappert, I think, the word that comes to me is balance. In other words, you've got a lot of balls in the air. When something gets out of balance, you know, where you're thinking, well, I'm doing this, but I'm sacrificing over here, and it's important, that's an area we, you know, maybe could help you with in some way. I'm not sure how. But you got the quality things to look at, you got the ER, you got PA oversight, you know, the documentation that you have to do, all of the, you know, on top of that is burnout. And so
I was about ready to talk about
we
that.
want to avoid.
We don't want to do that.
That's why I'm off today. That's why I'm taking tomorrow off, because I went to the eye doctor, but
Yeah,
I
But-
know when I'm over that hill, and
yeah,
I'm over
just,
the hill for the
just
moment.
let us know when it gets too far
Right.
one way, yeah.
Well, yeah, no, and everybody does need to be able to get days off, everybody does
Right.
need to be able to have vacation times, and everybody gets sick on occasion, and we have to deal with that.
I would ask you to keep your finger on exactly what you said earlier about two facilities, the community. And, it sounds crass to bring it up, but there is that financial incentive to trying to keep the health center afloat for that one reason. I'm not suggesting one way or another, guys. I'm just saying there is that financial aspect to consider. But other than that, I really don't have anything else to share today. If the board has any specific questions, I'm certainly willing to answer any you have.
Jim?
I, maybe not a question, but a comment. We tend to build budgets on an annual basis, and we haven't had any long-range planning, and I think, in the medical staff, you could say, hey, we're gonna need such and such in a couple more years. We don't know what that might
Are
be.
you talking equipment?
Yeah, equipment. something that'll help you as a medical provider?
I already know what I want as a medical, I need an iStat, guys. And that's,
It'd be nice for us to be able to look longer term
yeah.
on your, the things that you guys need.
Well, I think one way to build the framework.
We
we're
can't
looking-
afford a tongue
Well,
depressor, let alone a nice.
I understand that, but we
First
still
gotta get
need to.
stable.
Okay, so, my 2 cents worth, on that is this, in order to build a framework so you can look into the future, you do it by deciding which services it is you wanna provide as a hospital. You're doing it. Good, cause that's the only way you gotta build the future, to even look into the future. So, on our side, right now, we just wanna make sure that all the providers are up to snuff on all the basic requirements to do our job, so we're not, gonna run into any liabilities or whatever. Something as simple as, I need to renew my ATLS, okay, fine, that's gonna happen.
We were
Hospitals-
very happy to hear that we could get you into the one, in
Oh, yeah.
Missoula
Yeah.
next month, and stuff. We didn't
That's
think
fine.
that was possible, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's great. So,
Appreciate
little things like
getting
that,
that
the
done.
fact that, I don't know if the clinic or the hospital paid for it, or actually partnership might have paid for it. But I was able to go to the ALSO class, which is the Advanced Life Support for Obstetrics. Well, why would we need that? We're not doing obstetrics. You have an ER,
It happens.
and women come over from anywhere, and they're gonna have a baby, and you have 3 patients, a baby, a mom, and a uterus, and you better know how to competently take care of all 3, or you have a lawsuit. So again, it's because we have an ER, little things like that, and, maybe even adding the one other step, the pediatric life support thing, that's become kind of an onus. It's like ATLS, where there's a PEDS version, making sure that these are the basic little items, be nice to have, that is equipment. And then as for things we need in the hospital, we've talked in the past about having some sort of short-term BiPAP for respiratory support, but again, these are conversations we can have in a group, but the board needs to know that, yeah, we can have those conversations, let's have them. But let's make a framework so we can sit down and do it. And if it's after hours, I don't care, but let's do it. So, any other questions?
Yeah, I really do wanna compliment Dr. Pafford. I live right below him, in the apartment across the road, and, he puts in huge hours. I hear the door banging and closing, and, after he's been over here, for many, many hours, he'll come back over to the apartment, after seeing patients for a very long day, sometimes both at the clinic and the ER. He's, really complimenting. He's just a very dedicated, physician, and very, very committed to doing the right thing with patients and with the hospital and clinic. I have not seen that dedication by physicians very often in my 32 years. Sometimes I do, but Dr. Pafford really is very committed to, doing the right thing with patients.
Well, we need to do what's necessary to make sure we don't burn him out.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, we need ribs, we need a barbecue, folks.
That's a good
It's
idea.
getting dumb, snow's leaving, we need a barbecue.
That'll work.
Yeah, let's set
I'll buy
that
the
up.
ribs, I'll even cook them.
Mitzi, you set that up over at the apartment, in the back of the apartment? No, I won't, maybe I'll have to knock the lock off.
So Dr. Pafford, are you thinking, perhaps we should consider, I don't know if it's like, you're thinking like some kind of committee or something where we do sit down?
Informal or something.
Yeah, I don't know if I wanna formalize that, but how frequently,
Barbecue every other month also.
barbecue every other month?
Monthly barbecue.
Where we can,
I don't know, you know what, I don't have an answer to that. That's a good question, because I don't know if you already have something in place that will address Jim's question, which is, what do we do about looking ahead for equipment and stuff like this?
Or a Saturday retreat, or something.
Retreats
Get the
would
board
be-
together with you
Well,
and Laurel.
That's a splendid idea. That's a splendid idea. You know,
What was that, Larry?
A mental health day.
Mental health.
well, you know what, that sounds trivial, but I mean, really, we run a
I've done it in the past.
we run a high-pressure thing here where the employees do work high pressure all the time.
Sure.
And it's not just the providers, y'all, the board members, and if there's any community here, I mean, y'all need to know, everybody that works here works hard. You know, everybody is here, we're kind of a slim organization, so everybody's working. And if they aren't, they probably aren't here for long, because we need people to depend on, but, yeah, that might be a splendid idea.
I think you did this once before, maybe before I got here, but, do it again, half a day or something at the ambulance barn.
Yeah. And I have one more question for the board, and that is, how can I communicate with the board? I don't know what our organizational structure is right now, frankly. I mean, what is the expectation? If I need to even ask the board a question, do I have to come to the meetings, or is there outside? How can I communicate?
I think you can just communicate with me directly.
Okay.
Sure, absolutely. You need to have access to the
Yeah.
board.
I think it would have to be executive committee at
Yeah,
that
so
point,
the
that you
executive
communicate
committee
to Amy and she
is-
can pass it along. to
Right, so I'm the
executive
chair,
committee.
John's the vice chair, and the executive committee also includes Larry.
We get
Okay.
together, we've been getting together
Yeah.
about once a month, maybe just include
Yeah.
Dr. Pafford or something.
So do you
Or
have?
if you need direct access, I
Yeah.
can step aside or something
Yeah.
too.
Amy, Larry, John.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm available.
Okay.
Thursdays are pretty good days for,
Okay.
well, other than board meeting days.
Okay.
And,
Well, I
I
don't-
checked my email and, I'm available by phone too.
Okay.
If
Phone
you-
always works better for me, folks. If it's a mission important, please don't leave it in an email.
Okay,
Please find me. 'Cause
How do we
won't-
get-
I
how do we
won't
get a
see
hold
a
of you?
computer.
I don't
That's why-
have your number.
Well, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
You can write it down, 406-224-3893 is my cell. If I'm in clinic, it's 822-4278. If I'm at the hospital, it's 4841.
What was it for?
4841 is the hospital.
Okay.
And Thursdays, right now, I'm in the hospital to be the hospitalist for the day. And typically, I'm on call at night. So anyway, thank you.
Do you have my number?
What is your number?
649
649
0685.
0685. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pafford. Do you have anything else?
No, ma'am.
Okay. CEO report.
Last time, the board and the executive committee last time too, we agreed that the leadership team would prepare some options for the board to look at in terms of reducing expenses and increasing revenue. I've got that, most of that, I think, needs to be talked about in the executive session. Either personnel or benefits are under discussion, and those are certainly personnel matters. And, I don't wanna talk about too much there, without, discussing those, with the board later on in the agenda. That's probably enough said about that.
And I think-
Actually,
And I think it needs to be very clear that these are just discussion items.
Yeah, exactly. They certainly are. Actually, what I'm looking for from the board with this discussion is getting us on the same page with the leadership team so that we can move forward. We're all on the same page in terms of some of the ideas in terms of reducing expenses and increasing revenue. No decisions have been made. We're just simply talking at this point. And I just need a sense of direction as to where the board wants me to go with those discussions.
And I'll make one more pitch. What we would like to see more than anything else in the world is to not have to reduce expenses, to see revenue come up, and what we need is everybody to be focused on that in terms of, and there's no criticism intended in what I'm saying, but that in terms of us just really, really emphasizing customer service, and things like that, so that we can increase revenue, so we don't have to go near expenses.
Well, and
What we'd rather say.
Right.
I don't wanna cut anything that affects patient care.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, I would
Yeah.
rather ask the public for more levy than cut anything that affects patient care.
Right,
Yeah,
I agree.
agreed, and we've certainly taken that approach. I mean, actually, most of the items on my list here are, and there are quite a few of them, are revenue enhancers. I mean, we certainly will look at those and work very hard to implement those if the board gives us that direction, before we would look at any kind of reductions. And it's certainly our goal, you know, as Amy said, you know, if it does involve a reduction in expenses that, you know, that those don't affect patient care. We were very careful in, I called it Plan A, I guess, at the last board meeting. We felt we did a very good job of not going near patient care. But with the, you know, as you heard earlier from the Finance Committee did, and when Lloyd made his financial report, we do experience this declining revenue, and we need to be proactive in addressing those. That's all I'm trying to do here, and, you know, we'll discuss those and come to some decisions later. You know, back to hospital operations, if I can find my stuff, but well, maybe some good news. You probably get back to some good news, I guess. You know, Angie Mellon did have a pharmacy inspector a couple weeks ago, and not surprisingly, Angie runs a very good pharmacy tech program, and he found no deficiencies. You know, that was pretty amazing. There were absolutely no deficiencies on his survey of the pharmacy operation. We have, actually it's a 23 passenger bus. I think I said in the update report that I sent around, it was a 16 passenger bus, but it's a 23 passenger bus. Representative from the Kootenai Salish tribe came and got that bus, and it now is, we just gave it to them. We did not receive any cash or anything from it, from the transfer of that bus, but it's now running around the Jocko Valley providing services for the tribe. It's better doing that than sitting here in the front of the hospital.
Still got her name on her?
What's that?
We tried to get him to agree to that.
What's that? Oh, leave our name on?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we did talk about
Yeah.
that when we signed it over.
You know, I don't mind giving it to him, but you could have bartered for a few reservation fishing licenses.
Yeah, we should have tried that. But anyway, you know, that gets it off the books, and, you know, our main goal there was to, you know, save some dollars in terms of the operation. It was pretty expensive to operate with the, you know, with the CDL license that was required, plus all the maintenance and the fuel, mainly the fuel, you know, to run it around for an average of, you know, four riders a day. I mean, we made that decision right after I came last November, but just kind of following up with that. Lots of maintenance issues lately. I think most of you are aware that we have a temporary propane line that's up on top of the ground. It's probably going to cost, when the ground unthaws, the maintenance crew is going to have to get together with the propane people and ditch witch a permanent line, PVC line, and rerun that line. It's probably, we don't know exactly, but ditch witches aren't inexpensive to, and the ground is so hard, they're even talking about a front-end loader, a small front-end loader to, you know, to actually get it down so that they can rebury that line. We were losing a lot of propane. There was a bad leak, you know, with the propane, and at least that's fixed, but to fix it, it's going to, you know, cost quite a bit of money. We do have next week, lady was supposed to be here this week, but a biomass specialist, I mean, she's the biomass coordinator with the Department of Natural Resources, is going to be here. She was involved with the original grant for the biomass system. Again, we've had some control issues that were really a problem with the boiler. The boiler was actually kind of malfunctioning. It was, building pressure, and it had something to do with the old diesel boilers and the capability of switching them over, but it was a design issue. And the lady from Helena is going to walk us through that. It's been fixed, or it's in the process of being fixed by our people. But the controls and the fix was pretty expensive, and also we ran for quite a while on diesel, on the backup diesel, because of this control problem. And she's working with she's going to work with us to get some money back from the people who engineered it wrong in the first place a couple of years ago. So that was good news. She's also working with Sherry to identify a new source of pellets. The pellets have been really bad. They're full of sawdust, full of clinkers, messing up the system, the actual system.
We tried to work, because right now we get the pellets from down the road, right?
We've continually worked with the local pellet people, and they continue to send us cork and sawdust and issues. That also will be discussed with this lady from Helena in trying to either fix the problem, I guess, or if that's not possible, which I kind of doubt whether it is at this point, because other places like Plains, at the hospital in Plains, they have moved away from the local supplier, and she's proposed that we, identify a new supplier that will develop, a quality product. And so, that's in process. It may or may not happen, I guess, that we switch, but we're working on that. It has been an issue. Lots of work in maintenance being done on the surgery area. It's looking pretty nice up there. We have created a new entryway on that side of the building. We're about, Deb could maybe talk about that later, or chime in here, but we're about ready to direct outpatients and lab and x-ray folks, PT, everyone, over to that side of the upstairs part of the building, where you would come in there, register for outpatient services, and then there's a little waiting room at the main, and installed in the two clinic rooms, the surgery clinic rooms, the exam rooms up there. There's a lot of stuff going on with maintenance. They do a lot of stuff that you don't think about that's very time consuming, but it's been a good crew, and they really are busy lately. Certainly were the last couple of months with the heavy snow loads that we had. Did have a leaky roof in PT. That was causing some issues. They shoveled that thing off. I think it's a flat roof. I don't know why anyone in the world would, design a flat roof in this country, but they did, and I guess every winter that you have snow, that it, has issues. Virginia was kind enough when she came over and did her tour that we were talking about some tiles that were kind of stained, and she has some product that she uses, and she sent some over, which was very nice, and to fix it. Yeah, Sherry said that they tried it and it worked, and so they work. So that, yeah, just lots of issues going on with maintenance. The health fair, we talked about that a little bit earlier. We are in the process of doing blood draws. If you haven't had your health fair price blood draw, they're a lot less expensive than our regular prices for lipid panels and hemoglobin A1Cs for diabetics, and PSAs and TSHs and thyroid tests and all that kind of
My
stuff.
problem with this is, because we have to get it done for insurance and for my husband's work, we have to get all this stuff done. But it has to be done within 6 months of open enrollment.
Oh.
And we are outside 6 months, so I have to go in and get it done later in the fall anyway. So it doesn't do me any good.
We
I
are
don't know if
talking
there's
about
other people that run
extending
into
the
that.
period. We've had fewer people stopping by to have the work done, and Tom, we're probably gonna extend it just for another open month or something. We're talking about that, so, we'll keep everybody posted with that.
Can I
Maybe we
interrupt you?
can post it all the way to October.
Either that or I gotta come in anyway.
Amy, are you suggesting that maybe we rethink how we offer that, maybe become a little more creative to meet our community's needs on that?
Well, for me, cause I don't know if anyone else has that issue, but our issue is, well, we have to submit numbers, physician has to submit the numbers, but it's only during open enrollment period, and it has to be done within the 6 months of open enrollment, which is being in November or October-ish.
Right.
And so if it's March and April, it's too far away from that I would have to come in and do it anyway. I don't know if there's other people in the community that have that issue.
Is that kind of a common enrollment time for all places, or
I
think
November,
it's
December.
I think it's very
Open
common,
season's pretty
because,
common.
because
October,
they start
November,
the new benefits packages start on January 1 for a lot of.
Right, I'm just curious, I mean, does that even apply to us, when is our open enrollment?
We don't have to have it, it's not a
We don't-
requirement.
Okay, that'd be a good thing to
But for
find out,
some,
and
you know,
maybe.
We do have
Contact major employers?
patient-directed testing that we do all the time, which is at the reduced rates as well, so I think we just need to market what we're doing.
yeah, cause I
and
didn't
really
know that
get
was even available.
information out.
You didn't know? Let me tell you, all you got to do is show up, go down to the lab. The thing is, your doctor can't get the information unless you tell them to send it.
Well, they've done it in our company, they've done it such that you can't just go and get the numbers and submit them yourself, you have to go in for a physical and the physician has to
Yeah.
submit the numbers now.
Right, cause they
So
want,
you
they
gotta go
want
in
you
for
to
an
get the,
exam anyway.
they want you to get the benefit.
I mean, the patient-directed testing really wouldn't work in that
Yeah.
situation, would it? I mean, yeah, but,
And I don't know if other companies are
Unless
going
you
to
have
be.
a doctor's order and then
Right.
you do the patient testing, correct? I mean, we can work it out. I think it's just one of those things that we need to really look at the whole process, all the way
See what
through,
makes sense.
throughout the year and.
I think particularly what, the larger employers, what their,
In their mind, it's not that the physician has to order it, it's they want you to go see a doctor, period. And get
Yeah.
some sort of health maintenance education,
No, that's
care,
true.
somebody look over your stuff, so we all be able to work some out.
that,
Yeah.
well, they actually, the physician has to submit the paperwork, we can't even do it, so, yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna just stop right real quick. I have to bail. I have something I have to go meet with at the school. John is prepared and he's gonna take over running the rest of the meeting, and I appreciate that, so. We'll be in touch so that I can get updated.
oh, thanks, Amy.
So, thank you, everyone.
I'll make one more comment on that particular subject, something I raised with Larry before. Another way it's happening, and this is probably a pretty significant market, whether there's any way we can get a piece of it or not, I don't know. But MMIA, which insures an awful lot of the municipal employees throughout the state, actually sends people around once a year to do blood tests, and they do, blood tests, weight, several things like that. The employees get a $50 gift card to go and get tested, and then another $50 gift card if they call up MMIA's doctor to talk about the results afterwards. Whether we can work with them either to get some of the testing business or anything like that, but that, and maybe there's nothing there, but you may find that more and more companies that are trying to get proactive in terms of keeping their insured healthy are going to do things like that, and will bypass us unless we try and find a way to keep a handle on a piece of it. But, okay, anyway, Larry, anything more?
Well, just a few more things, just a couple of thank yous, I guess. I think Lori Johnston, I think he followed through and donated that chair. I appreciate that very much. Leona was here, Leona isn't here today, I just noticed that. Leona talked about, the need for infusion chair, and Lori very graciously donated a chair that she had from confusion area up there. I really appreciate that, appreciate you doing that.
This is the first meeting I've ever been to on this board when Leona has not been here.
She must be sick.
It's been a long time, so she.
Truly, this is the first meeting ever.
Yeah, I just noticed, I guess I should have paid more attention.
Well, what you missed, I think, is she was here a meeting, the last meeting, telling us she'd just been in the hospital.
I saw that in the
Did you
minutes.
see
I
that?
thought,
Okay,
all
yeah.
right.
So, and maybe that's why she's not here, she's not
Might
mad
very
at us
well be.
anymore. But,
Just a quick note also, I did file the corporate annual reports to the Secretary of State for both this board and the foundation board. It's pretty easy these days, it's all online, and finally got that done. Well, that's probably enough with with just the hospital operations. It has been very busy with Next Gen. Deb and Ray can.
yeah, that's the next line item on the agenda, so that's where we'll go then.
Sure.
Yes, Deb?
Well, we, went live last week. I think that we had a team of about 15 people here from Next Gen, working with us. We went through a lot of issues. They resolved a lot of tickets, and we're working through things. There are things out there that we need to resolve. We had a conference call this morning at 9, and I think we have about 35 tickets open that we're following. Some of them have been expedited. Some of them we have 2 and 3 builders working on, because they're things that have to be fixed within the system very timely, and then there's some other things that are smaller issues that we're resolving on an email process system that, we send the email in and they give us an answer back in a minute. A lot of things which are being identified are user error type things, which we're very aware will happen. You're new in a system, and people are gonna not know exactly the right direction to go, so we're trying to resolve those things. We're trying to do as much communication out as we can, in the midst of trying to keep up all of the other work that's going on. We also know that we have some training that we still need to do. Providers need to get some additional training, so we're working on possibly having Next Gen come back and getting some of that set up. We want to identify somebody from the Next Gen side that can work directly with our provider group, so that it's a one-on-one type thing, and so we'll be talking to Dr. Pafford more on that after our call this morning, so we'll work through some of those things. And Ray was on the call this morning, and I think there's lots of conversation that we're gonna, bring him up to speed on what we've been doing and the tickets that are open, and get the process of some of that stuff looked at again going forward. And every day is a new little challenge. On Tuesday, I believe it was, the system went down. It came back up within about 15-20 minutes, and then it went down again and was down most of the day. We converted back to paper, and that was a little interesting from my perspective, just because we'd only been off of paper for 3 or 4 days, and now that we're into an electronic health record, in a lot of ways we were strapped, because we didn't have paper and we didn't know how to go back to using paper in a sense, but part of that is because the orders and everything are in the system, and so it's not on a piece of paper anymore. So how do you get through those functions, and so we'll be writing downtime procedures and getting through those things. Next Gen has been very responsive to what we're doing. I think there are some issues out there that that they're being sort of strapped with, that they're not sure at this point how to fix them, but they are putting the resources to those, and hopefully we'll be getting answers. As far as getting bills off the system, we know that bills can come off the system. Right now we're not coding, and partially because we don't see all of the charges in the system dropping. Part of that is training issues with getting orders in, getting people understanding what they have to do to get that charge to drop. Some of it is the discharge function that has to happen in the clinical side and the financial side for the process to flow. So there's all of some of those kinds of issues, but I think overall we're doing fairly well. Now from quality side, maybe Ray, you could kind of speak to a little bit of that and the patient care perception from maybe the nursing standpoint. Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's okay. I do believe that NextGen is a quality product. I do believe that it has its limitations. I do not believe that it is extremely user-friendly. All that being said, I do think that we have a competent staff that can adapt to NextGen, can learn how to use NextGen, and will learn to do all that stuff. I feel like we're fortunate that we have people in-house who can build things within NextGen that we lack at this point. And we do need to find contingency plans for instances like on Wednesday when the system crashed. I'm not sure what went into that, but I'm sure we're going to figure that out and at least address it the best that we can. But for the most part, I do think that it's a workable program, and I think that we will do fine by it.
Dr. Babbitt?
Can I ask a question and make 2 points?
Sure.
Regarding next, I think it's important for everybody just to keep in mind, don't get rosy, fuzzy feelings just yet. There's a lot of work to be done here. The NextGen people that were there to help us were surprised. Y'all need to remember that. That's not me being over the top. They were surprised by the failures that we encountered, and a lot of them did not have answers. So you need to understand that's the environment that everybody's using as we work through this, okay? The other part, another thing I had a specific question for was, I saw their workaround for this, but did we ever find where the providers can put in our levels of service for inpatient and the daily visits and progress notes and all that stuff?
The actual orders for your rounds and inpatient charges was a process that we had to build in the charge master side on financials.
Okay.
Tonight started building
They
those because it all kind of happened at the go live point, so those
Yeah.
are all built now. But he's in the process and he has to add some different departments and some different structures. So I think by tonight that will be in the system and we'll.
Because what we want to avoid is, so we saw a certain number of daily progress notes, there was some admission notes, there was some discharge. You guys need to know there were no charges put in for any of those. Okay, they aren't there yet. Thankfully, if it's all put together this week, then we're not talking 18 months to a solution, we're talking 1 week to a solution. But it was a concern for all the providers because we're going, whoa, give me back my piece of paper so I can at least write down something for the billing department. One other thing that we ran into very quickly, we ran into a situation, the first day obviously implementing, we discovered very quickly, and I know this isn't an item that we have budgeted for, but we ran into very quickly, we do need computers in the patient rooms. We have no way of showing and sharing with families and answering their questions directly in the patient rooms. It's something we could have always done in the past with a paper chart. We do not have that utility now. And believe me, we had one family leave AMA. We had another family, very trusted members in the community. We delayed their discharge for hours. It's a very difficult process. But having a computer in the patient room is something we are going to have to address. We're going to have to do it. Because otherwise, it looks bad. Because where did my doctor go? Where did my PA go? They left the room. Why did they leave the room? We had a question for them. That is not a situation we want to be in. Please.
I mean, you want the capability to do bedside charting, which makes sense.
And there's lots of cons about the specifics. Those are minor. An angry family is never minor.
Right, yeah,
Where
no,
are
it's
you going,
without a
man?
doubt.
We're talking to you. Where are you going? No, I'm here. I've got this thing. Don't mind me. I'm used to fudging around here with computers, but I'm going to answer your question. Now, that's what they want to hear. Okay?
Yeah, without a doubt.
I want to get there.
And does it need to be a computer? Is it
Has to be.
a
I don't
tab-
care.
We'll figure that out, but at the time that we were making the decision to purchase the hardware, we had no line of credit to pay for that bill of whatever it was when we were ordering out $1,200 computers and $6,000 portable units and that type of thing. So we did the best we could, and honestly, at that time, when we had to make that hardware purchase, we weren't even 100% certain that we were going forward with NextGen. or
Yeah, no,
anything.
and
But
nobody's
now
criticizing
that
that
we've
it wasn't
identified
done.
it, and you can do it so quickly, you could order up a laptop and you can get this on it, and you can hand it to a provider there, then it can happen in a matter of
Yeah,
a
well,
week.
Well,
I
we'll
have
look
two
at it.
already
Yeah, I'm
identified,
thinking
so
these are not very
it's-
big
yeah.
numbers, that they aren't, I'm sure it doesn't have to be that sophisticated a machine to be able to.
And are you talking about just inpatients, you know,
Just,
skilled
well,
nursing?
okay, so you're gonna, okay, let's just talk inpatient just for a second. If in, well, we have 4 rooms, maybe 5 rooms, well, let's just say 4, okay?
Okay.
Either a client or a large laptop, because it turns out the size of the laptop and the way that these are configured, it actually will affect and injure the menus in NextGen, because NextGen is not multi-platform flexible. Okay, you need to know that.
Whatever that means.
Well, what that means is, if on a laptop,
works
you
on a
can't
laptop, but not on a
access,
Oh, I see.
on a laptop, you cannot
I-
access all of the menu items on the screen that you can on a larger, more conventional desktop screen.
Sure.
And it turns out it's because of the real estate on the screen, and they've limited, here's my screen, but NextGen's only designed to fit a small portion of your screen.
Sure.
It will not expand to fill, therefore those menus are hampered. So on the desktop type machines with the larger conventional monitor, apparently it's all worked out for that. You're still only using a portion of that real estate, but all their menus work. On a laptop, you lose that flexibility, you lose menus.
Um,
It's a little bit of a disaster.
Yeah,
Okay, now having said that, so you got a client or something in the rooms, maybe 4 rooms. Just off the top, these are not my numbers, this came from one of the IT people, we were just curbside conversation, roughly $600 per unit. That doesn't count the mounting or how you're gonna hold the thing. That can be ridiculous, anywhere from $600 a unit to thousands a unit. Well, we don't wanna go crazy,
yeah, Randy was saying, what was it,
you know, but
5 or 6
now,
thousand?
if I briefly.
Just for the thing to hold the.
And if I
dugout.
briefly bring in the ER, yes, maybe a unit there in the ER, but now there are other issues related to implementation of the ER, is that it does take time to do this kind of entry. Well, if we have a busy ER, you're also gonna have to look at, and this is just me talking, but you may have to think about making another staff person available so that you have a smooth flow in your ER on a busy 3-bed night. Because otherwise, you're gonna have providers sitting in front of machines when they should be sitting in front of patients, and in the ER, that's a bad plan.
Yeah.
Okay, so start thinking about some kind of clerk or something, I don't know, that's out of my expertise.
Well, we'll
Those are
talk about it.
legitimate issues.
Certainly, we'll get on it. And
We have 2 laptops already identified, already set up,
Okay.
ready to go. We do have extra monitors, and so that's part of that discussion that we wanna have with you, Dr. Pafford, is
How you want that set up?
how you want that set up and what that looks like. So we've started down that trail just since last weekend.
Thanks.
Just real quickly, you know, maybe to summarize with the NextGen, I mean, if you had said to me a month ago that we were gonna have this conversation, that we'd actually go live, I wouldn't have given you a 10% chance that we were actually gonna get this done. I was, you know, I think I expressed that to the board, you know, last month. But it was, we really did get some movement on the patient portal issue, you know, the support, and I think all of it related really, a month ago when I was in Bozeman, you know, and we were, you know, on the phone back and forth with NextGen, we finally got them to agree to, you know, come out and do a week's worth of training at very little expense to us, just some, you know, a few travel vouchers, you know, to get them out here. We had their whole team out here working with our folks, you know, for a solid week, and then from there, it seemed to fall into place. I mean, yeah, there's lots of little issues here, but I don't think any more than, you know, an Epic install, or a Cerner install, or another systems install. And I am just, you know, I really do compliment our crew and NextGen. You know, I hate to give NextGen credit, but it seems to have, have really settled in, and, you know, lots of stuff to work on, lots of stuff to continue on, but I actually can see hope that we're gonna actually retrieve our 700,000 or whatever it's going to be from the meaningful use, which is very important that we do that, so that we can pay off our capital lease, for that equipment, or for that software, and, for the whole install. So it was really encouraging, last week, to have some discussion about, well, gee, our next step is to, within after about a 60-day period of trying to work all these bugs out, that we can start thinking about the meaningful use demonstration period, and maybe get our money back, by the end of September or something, or before the end of this year.
Good. Okay.
A lot better news than it was a month ago.
Okay. Anything else on next gen?
Yes, have we paid that amount, or did you?
No, we're still holding on to, about $286,000 worth of invoices.
Yeah, something like that, but we're gonna be under pressure to pay that.
Yeah.
We're actually getting warnings when we go into some of the systems saying that you're delinquent on your payment.
I mean, if they really want to get tough with us, they just shut it off, and say, send us your money, we keep, the folks keep getting these electronic messages. You got some this week.
We have the money set aside to do it.
Well, we had one, and then the whole system went down, so we thought maybe.
Well, you just throw it in the capital lease.
But it wasn't related to payment issues, so anyway.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, all right, next is foundation board meeting, Mitzi.
I just wanted to let you know that I attended the March 10th foundation meeting. It was their 40th anniversary, and the foundation was quite disappointed in the turnout. There were 2 extra people there. Roger had provided the paper with a very nice article that did not get run, so that was probably a good reason for the low attendance. But there were 2 extra people, and their push is to find some new foundation members. As they say, they're getting old and tired, and the same old things that they do is not as fun as it used to be. But had a great lunch, and they still have a lot of things that they want to do, and are gearing up toward the car show. It ain't junk sale, so that's all I know.
Bylaws committee, Jim, anything report? Okay.
No.
Clinical outcomes, quality improvement, Gary?
We did not have a meeting since the last one in February. We're scheduled to have one next week.
Okay.
Not sure, Kirsten, if that one is gonna happen. Is it still scheduled as like April 3rd, Thursday?
Yeah. Yeah, the 27th was canceled because Dr. Packard and I are on vacation, and I forgot about that.
Okay.
I got your email this morning, though.
Oh, good. Good deal, so.
And I talked to Denai and Kim Gordon about it as well, so.
All right.
Okay.
The only thing I can think of, I think Dr. Pafford is working on revising the protocol, or looking at the protocol in the ER on chest pain. We talked about that.
I didn't do the chest pain one. Wade had worked on that
Yeah, he
once
did.
in the past, and what I'll do is I'll sit down with Kirsten, and, because we got all these little committees, I was working on the pneumonia one previously. I found out from Tanai that if I would just start sliding him a card with sections that he can place into NextGen, he'll just start putting things into place. Sort of like menu blocks that providers can pull from, but just to get things in. Not necessarily, it's not the same thing saying, oh, here's an approved protocol. This is just to say, well, if you want to, here's some things that a person might order. say for community-acquired pneumonia or this or that. I don't know. I have had no conversations with anyone about chest pain on any committee or anything like that, but I'm certainly happy to be involved in that. I will tell you that we follow standards. You know, we go right down the list. You come in with chest pain, we're going down the list, man. We don't play around and we don't work from memory.
I've contacted about a dozen or so critical access hospitals in the state, including both magnet hospitals, which are critical access hospitals.
Yeah.
And our ED protocol is either up to par with them or supersedes them.
Yeah.
And I've actually gotten protocols from out of state, and although I haven't found any national guidelines in searching different research databases,
Yeah.
I'm quite confident that we
Yeah.
do meet
Yeah,
standards.
and I use a third source. I use a software package called Pepid. I pay pretty good money for it each year. And so I find myself in the role of whenever chest pains come in, I review what we have on the wall just to make sure we're doing our jobs, you know, some kind of a distant oversight. And then the other part of that is I'm always looking at the latest and the greatest. And I also look at our paperwork. So we're following as closely as we can. We're always pushing for quicker times and specific little measures, but we're doing the right things.
Okay. All right, customer satisfaction, Carol?
You know, we've had weekly meetings for a long time, but they all got put on hold, I guess, because of the next gen situation, so I assume in the next week or two we'll pick up again.
Okay. All right, next is professional affairs. That's Amy, and I know she has 2 privileging requests here. They've been reviewed and are complete. Would need action by the total board, and whether anybody wants to go through them first. But it's Dr. Bruce Mikesell, who I know has also been privileged at the health center, and Micah, and I'm bad on pronunciations, anybody know it? Viegel.
She's with Medical Imaging Associates, she's a radiologist.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? If not, I need a motion to approve.
Yeah.
Is there anybody from the committee here besides Amy? Who's not here anymore?
I can tell you that as a member of the medical staff, we reviewed every page in those 2 documents. Based on the information presented to us, and there, we cannot find a reason not to recommend them for approval. I would, with confidence, say I would recommend for approval.
I would so move.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And that is the process. I mean, the medical staff recommends to the board.
Right. Right. Yep. Okay, so they are approved. I'll sign them before I leave today. Okay, unfinished business, hospital board of directors positions. I don't know, Lori, is that something you can wanna give us any more hospital board of directors positions?
I talked to Marcia, and, her suggestion was, because, you know, we missed the deadline on, filing to put it on the ballot, is to, advertise in the paper that there's 3 positions open, and then, say, run it for 2 weeks, get the applications, and then the board will review the applications and then make recommendation to the county commissioners as, who would be put on board. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna ask Stacy and just, make sure that, I don't wanna ruffle her feathers, so, but, I think, we'll just, I guess the hospital board will then put an ad in the paper for 3, positions. One would be Jim's position, and then, Dr. Patterson's unexpired term, and then Dr. Smith's unexpired term. And then, and I'll have the applications picked up in, Cindy's office, which is the commissioner's assistant's office, and then return them to her, and then after the 2 weeks, and then you can pick them up and get Cindy, and we'll go from there. Well,
Do we have to
and
submit the
that's
next
what,
time?
I think that's what we need to do, is maybe have Mitzi put on, say that, on a recurring calendar as a reminder, the first part of January to, you know, because I think the deadline was February 20th
See,
was the
that's really
deadline
what the
for
snafu was though, because, just for the record, I went to Stacy and asked her back in December, and she said they would be notified of all the vacancies,
Yep,
but it never happened.
it never happened.
So,
Yes.
in any case,
But it would be a good idea, a reminder then that they can remind, you know, Stacy that she was under the impression that it ran with the schools.
Yeah.
The deadline was the same as the schools, and it wasn't, and by the time she realized it was already past the deadline to file, so. Anyway, but this way, then you can say, okay, hey, we need to get on this and.
So what Stacy did say when Amy and I went February 20th was that it was up to the hospital to advertise that the positions were open.
Yeah, I'll check into that, because I don't know if, you know, I mean.
She said the county or she had nothing to do with that. The hospital had to do that.
Yeah, I don't know what they did in the past. Did the hospital do it in the past? Do
Kathy
you know?
Jasper told us,
What's that?
Yeah.
Kathy Jasper used to tell us,
we've always been notified by that office. Because there are differences.
Yeah,
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
school and the others are
schools,
conservation district supervisors. You got weed boards, you got the library board, you got the
Airport board.
all the
Airport
boards are
board.
handled by the clerk and recorder's office.
cemetery board, they're all different. But I assume I think if you look at the law, you'll find that it's her responsibility
Yep.
to notify when those elections are due.
John, I have kind of a related question. Do you have officers in the district board? Because every once in a while, like, a question comes up, who's the chair of the district?
We do not, we've never met separately, we don't have separate officers. I mean, we just,
For a long, I think this is the first time we've had a corporate director as the chair, and so they can't be the chair of both, obviously.
yeah, well, you've got a district director as a vice chair, so I guess if it's a district issue, I'll just serve the purpose of chairing the district portion of it. But we're not holding separate meetings, we're just doing it right here amongst the group when there's something that requires a specific district vote, so. And the only function I serve in that position really is asking people to vote, so.
Well, I think that's actually what happened when Virginia was appointed, right?
Correct,
You know,
yeah.
You chaired that portion of the meeting.
Yep.
A couple of months ago.
Yeah, but we've never held a separate meeting or appointed separate.
Whenever there's a report that asks who's the district board chair, we'll put you down.
Sure. Everybody else happy with that?
Sure. I don't get to vote.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right, anything else there? Next one is CEO Recruitment Committee, that's my report. What we had, our thinking all along had been that we wanted to wait until things were more stable financially, feeling that it was going to be difficult to get somebody to come in and be willing to take on the position of CEO when it wasn't clear how we were doing or